Hi guys, Ricardo here. I've got lots of fascinating things to share with you today, so I'm hoping that my brain is in good working order. There's a lot to remember. Raise your hand if you have a brain. Yep, everybody's hands should have gone up. Yes, of course you have a brain. All vertebrates have brains. Who remembers what else all vertebrates have? That's right, a backbone. You know that you have a backbone. You've been testing out those wonderful flexible spines that support your bodies and protect your spinal cord. We want to always be thinking too, guys, how our life would be different if we didn't have a backbone. We've talked about it before, but we would probably need that big giant exoskeleton surrounding us in order to make it around and be safe. We'll continue with our reading. Point to the brainstem. The brainstem, remember, is going to be down here. The cranium, that's your skull, up here. So remember those pieces as we go through today. You've learned that your nervous system is a complex network with two essential organs: your spinal cord running down your vertebrae and your brain. Your spinal cord is connected to your brain by your brainstem. Remember that little piece we talked about down here. The brainstem is the central trunk of the brain. Your brain itself is very soft, but it is well protected by your cranium or brain case. This strong eggshell-shaped part of your skull is formed from 8 interlocking bones. That means the bones are connected together. They're wedged together like pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. So our brain's made up of 8 bones that come together like puzzle pieces. Inside your skull, your brain floats in a clear liquid that cushions it and keeps it from banging against your skull. Your brain is covered in grooves and folds, resembling a huge walnut, about the size of a cantaloupe or a grapefruit. This jelly-like pinkish-gray blob has blood vessels running all through its wrinkled mass. They carry oxygen, water, and other important nutrients to the brain. So I think that's crazy just to think about. Our brains are sitting in a clear liquid inside of our heads. What do you think would happen? Take a moment to think. What do you think would happen if there wasn't liquid in there? Remember, that purpose of the clear liquid is that it cushions your brain and keeps your brain from banging against your skull. So if we didn't have that clear liquid, what do you think could happen? We'd be much more susceptible or likely to get our brain injured, which would not be fun. So that liquid's protecting your brain. The brain, when fully grown, weighs about 3 pounds. That may seem pretty small and light for such a big body, but humans have larger brains than animals when compared with the body size. So even though the brains of elephants and whales are actually larger than human brains, their brains are smaller than ours compared with the enormous size of their body. So kind of just to summarize that a little bit, what they're saying is our brain weighs 3 pounds when we're fully grown, but our bodies are not super huge when we're fully grown. Whales' brains might be a lot bigger than us, but their bodies are way bigger than ours. So compared to the body size, human brains are pretty large. We'll zoom out on this image just a little bit so we can make sure we're seeing all those important parts that we kind of talked about earlier in our vocabulary review. There are 3 main sections of the brain that we see here. There is the brainstem, which is located down here. The cerebrum, which is going to be this front part right here. And the cerebellum, which is back here. Each part of the brain has an important function. Your brainstem, right down here, is about as thick as your thumb. It is approximately 3 inches long, and it helps relay messages between your brain and the spinal cord. The bottom third of your brainstem, the part that blends into the top of your spinal cord, is called the medulla. The medulla is responsible for many of your body's involuntary or automatic muscle movements. The medulla makes sure that your lungs are receiving oxygen by controlling your breathing and making sure your heart is beating. The medulla helps you swallow and break down food in your digestive system. So I would have to say that that medulla is really important. It's controlling a lot of those things that we don't have to think about in order to do. It controls our breathing, it controls our digestion, helps you swallow food. So the nervous system and the digestive system are very much interconnected. The medulla controls your coughs and your sneezes and your hiccups, as well as your sleeping and your dreaming. It also controls the movements of your head and your neck. So if we didn't have this medulla, take a moment to think, or if you have someone near you, share what would happen if we didn't have a medulla. If you were thinking that instead of being able to do things automatically, we'd have to think about those things, you'd be right. It's like we'd have to think about breathing all the time and think about, okay, food, let's go down the digestive system now. That'd be a lot of extra brain work the rest of your brain would have to do. The cerebrum, which is located at that front part of your brain, is the largest part of your brain, filling the whole upper part of your skull. Language, memory, thought, sensation, and decision making are all housed in your cerebrum. Your cerebrum is the thinking brain, and the part of the cerebrum that does most of the thinking is called the cerebral cortex. Your cortex is deeply wrinkled outer surface of the cerebrum. The more that it is used, the thicker it becomes. In other words, people who use their brains to think a lot develop thicker cortexes. So hopefully you guys are always thinking about what we're learning in school and what you're doing and have your brain rolling, because then you're going to have a thicker cerebral cortex. Do you think your cortex is getting any thicker? Yes, it is, because you're learning a lot every single day. Ooh, these are those hemispheres that we talked about earlier. We said our brain was kind of split into two, so we will look at it. Let's look more closely at the cerebrum. The cerebrum is divided into two halves, or hemispheres. We have the left side and the right side of the brain. The two hemispheres of the brain, the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, are linked to one another by thick nerve fibers. Interestingly, the nerves that connect your cerebrum to the rest of your body cross over to the opposite side as they enter your brain. This means that each hemisphere largely controls the muscle of the opposite side of your body. So, the left side of your brain is going to control the right side. The right side of your brain is going to control the left side of your body. Place your left hand on your head and wave your right arm. The left side of your cerebrum controls the muscles on the right side of your body. Now place your right hand on your head and wave your left arm. The right side of your cerebrum, where your hand is, controls the muscles on the left side of your body, where you're waving your arm. One hemisphere is more developed than the other in most people. If you use the right side of your brain more, the right side of your body more, that is, you kick with your right foot, you hold your pencil with your right hand, then the left hemisphere is dominant or in control. It is the left hemisphere that is mostly associated with language, math, and reading. So I like this visual here because it really breaks down things that your sides of your brain are in control of. So the left side of your body is going to be thinking of language and reasoning, science, math, reading, and right hand control. So that's a lot of, aside from the right hand control, this is a lot of the things that we do when we're in our classroom between reading and CKLA and writing and doing our science and our social studies. Reading is always going to be a huge piece of all those. So great to think about how that's going to be, the left side of the brain is going to be in such control of those things. The right side of the brain is more of that art, the creativity, imagination, shape, music, shapes, and it's going to control that left hand. So you have to think of what your interests are and what you feel like you're better at, and it might tell you which side of your brain might be thicker than the other as well. If, however, you use the left side of your body more, that is, you kick with your left foot and you hold your pencil with your left hand, the right hemisphere is dominant. The right hemisphere is mostly associated with imagination, music, and shapes. The third part of your brain, in addition to the brainstem and the cerebrum, is called the cerebellum, which means little brain. Tucked under your cerebrum in the back of your brain, your cerebellum resembles your cerebrum with two hemispheres of its own. Your cerebellum is the control center for balance and coordination. It is constantly adjusting the way your body moves. As you practice any physical activity, such as dancing, your cerebellum receives messages to your body's actions and positions. It sends commands back to your muscles, adjusting your movements. As your cerebellum gradually becomes more accurate in its corrections, you become to notice improvement in your dancing or whatever activity you're trying to perfect. For example, if you have learned to ride a bike, chances are you didn't master it at once. It took practice. Your cerebellum was in charge of your balance and coordination, making small adjustments with each improvement until you could pedal quickly and furiously on your own without even thinking about it. Let's try an experiment to demonstrate what the cerebellum does. And at home, I want you to make sure you're doing it with us. Close your eyes and reach your arms out to your side of your body. So your side of your body makes a shape with a T, the shape of a T. Slowly bring your arms forward, touching the fingertips together. You may open your eyes now. Was that easy for you? Your cerebellum coordinates your movements for you. If you damaged your cerebellum, you would not be able to do this simple exercise, no matter how hard you tried. Your hands would jerk around without any control. So if you didn't have that cerebellum, you have to think about what your life would be like. If you didn't have that control of your hands, and even just bringing your hands together and touching your fingertips was causing jerky movements, would you be able to run or walk or ride your bike or do gymnastics like this gymnast or throw the ball or catch the ball or ride your bike or dance like these kids? Those activities you wouldn't have that controlled movement that you would otherwise have. The human brain. Now let's pull apart all of your brains together. Look at this picture of the brain. See if you can identify the three parts. Find the brainstem and point to it. The cerebrum, the cerebellum. Our brainstem, the cerebrum, the cerebellum. I'm going to ask you 3 riddles to test your knowledge and see how well your brain is working. Are you ready? I'm the largest part of the brain, divided into 2 hemispheres. I am sometimes called the thinking brain. What am I? If you said cerebrum, you are correct. Here's our next riddle. I'm only 3 inches long, but without me, the spinal cord would not be connected to the brain. One of my parts is called the medulla. What am I? If you said brainstem, you would be correct. Here's our final riddle. I look a lot like the cerebrum, with 2 hemispheres of my own, but I am much smaller. Without me, you would not be able to balance on one leg. What am I? The cerebellum. Great job, everyone. Your brain is not very big, and yet it is more powerful than the strongest computer ever created. All other systems of the body are dependent upon this complex 3-pound organ that lives inside your skull. Your brain is the center of your memory, your thoughts, your feelings. Your brain is the command of your whole body. When your brain stops working, the rest of your body will stop working as well.